In this video, I would like to discuss a fairly recent topic that has become quite linked with MGTOW. I'm not entirely sure if I was the first to introduce this term here in Brazil, but I began to describe it as Volcel. Naturally, some incels might also identify as MGTOWs, yet for a man to be considered an incel, he must have experienced significant misfortune in life's lottery. This means being utterly impoverished and possessing a high degree of unattractiveness, whether in terms of physical appearance or personal character. Any guy who's an incel, if you provide him with some real insights and expose him to a bit of the red pill ideology, then get him to commit himself fully for a month or two, he can resolve his issues. But the key takeaway is that even this incel might reach the same conclusion as a MGTOW, realizing that relationships might not be worth the effort, given the current circumstances. Or, as Barbarossa used to say, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Essentially, for you to extract the juice, the effort involved in squeezing the fruit to obtain the juice doesn't quite make up for the quality of the juice that you get afterwards. The term I began to use was Volcel. This refers to someone who flies the sky, and clearly it describes the voluntary celibate. In this context, we're discussing MGTOWs who have previously had wives or girlfriends and now choose to be alone, because that's what they prefer, you see. Basically, it's similar to a hangout I had a long time ago with Fox, where Fox mentioned that he is already alone. He's been celibate for quite a long time now. Essentially, he's turning into the national thinknate. In a little while, he'll have reached 2 or even 3 years of celibacy. But what Fox mentioned was quite aligned with what I was pondering at that moment. Fox said that for him, merely observing the cattle, the women, and the beautiful cattle was sufficient. He already feels lazy because he doesn't want to give up his free time, and he also doesn't want to lose his peace. Basically, I'm in a similar situation. I look at the gadis, let's start calling them gaditis. I look at them and I start calculating in my head, oh, how much time I'm going to have to devote to going out with this girl and getting her. And then there's that money figure, how much I'm going to have to spend somewhere. Obviously, I'm not paying the woman's bill. I'm just talking about my bill. And then there's the whole process of calculating the time that will need to be invested in the conquest, along with the money that will be involved. You start to feel lazy, thinking maybe it's not worth it, because everything I need is right here in my hand, you know? I'm also in a similar situation, not wanting to give up my privacy, my hobbies, or my free time. So, in fact, when women, feminists, traditionalists, or whoever say that, but you can't get women, because if you could, you wouldn't act like that. Or perhaps you think you can't attract the women who meet your standards, right? The super treadfots, right? The Maria's exceptions. The question is completely misunderstood. The question and the reasoning are both completely off. The real question isn't about whether or not a guy can successfully make a conquest, maintain a relationship with a woman, or even take charge of a relationship, you know? Tackle the issue, because ultimately, the contemporary woman is causing you an unbelievably intense headache. The past 20 to 30 years of more modern feminism, following the second wave, have been utterly ridiculous. The sheer amount of nonsense that has been instilled into women's minds is overwhelming. It's the era of Sex and the City. It's a generation that has been repeatedly told that they should not be judged based on how many partners they've had. STD is acceptable. It's also considered fine to consume large quantities of the pill, believing they can still have children at the age of 40 or even 45. Now it's reaching extremes where they even expect governments in some countries to use public funds for policies like egg freezing and in vitro fertilization, among other things. So consider the creature you're dealing with when it comes to the modern woman. It's not about whether you can or can't have a relationship with this woman. As I mentioned, people often link incels with MGTOW. However, MGTOW is the group ready to support incels, and there's a clear difference between incel and Volcel. An incel is blue pill. He believes that having a woman will complete his life and make it better. This is quite different from the experiences of many men on this channel. Many people here, when they were quite young, had this notional belief that if they found a woman, their life would improve significantly, thinking she would assist them in their journey. Haha, what a trick from the scoundrel. Then one relationship passes, and the girl only gives you a headache, draining you completely. Another relationship occurs, and again, the girl only gives you a headache, draining you completely. How many times must you endure this before you finally learn your lesson? Eventually, you reach the conclusion that, no, my friend, a woman is an addition to your life, but she is by no means a necessary complement. It's someone who isn't going to contribute, and someone who will offer any help, perhaps in the first few months, say 2 or 3 of a relationship, when she's deeply in the honeymoon phase and completely captivated by you, but eventually she begins to drain and demand increasingly more from the man. So the question isn't just about whether or not the guy can manage to conquer, enter into a relationship, and then maintain that relationship. The main question is really this: what benefit does the modern man actually get from it? That's the question we need to ask. What's in it for the guy? If the guy is aware that, all right, I can attract this woman, she's within reach, I possess the resources needed to win her over, I can have a meaningful relationship with her, and I'm psychologically secure enough to take charge of the relationship and address any issues that arise, along with dealing with the woman's problems, which are, as I mentioned, the challenges faced by the modern woman, who is extremely ironic, very entitled and spoiled, who believes she can do anything and thinks she has the power to end the relationship whenever she wants. At any given moment, you see, we've already moved past the stage where divorce can happen for no reason, and now we're reaching the point where society is beginning to propose adultery as if it was something completely acceptable. Adultery, open relationships, and let's not forget those countries that have the situation where a woman can become pregnant and the man involved, whether it's her boyfriend or husband, doesn't have the right to request a DNA test. Either it's completely prohibited or he must get the woman's consent, which effectively means it's forbidden. So the real question isn't whether or not the guy can win over a woman and keep a relationship going. The question is what he truly gains from it. Is it worth the effort? If there are any benefits at all, really? Because as Raging Golden Eagle mentioned in his videos from a couple of years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years back, the comparison he made with modern relationships was like this. Imagine you're in a company working incredibly hard and each year you never get promoted. Your responsibilities only grow, your working hours extend even more, and your salary keeps decreasing. That's essentially what has transpired over the past few decades, particularly in the last 50 years, concerning men, whether they find themselves in committed dating relationships or in deeply committed marriage relationships, which encompass both marriage and the responsibilities of fatherhood. You see, the expectations placed on men have increased significantly because the economy started to evolve into one where both men and women are actively participating in the workforce. It became increasingly challenging for a man to sustain himself financially on his own. With this sexual liberation and empowerment, women have become more and more demanding, more and more spoiled. And nowadays, not only does the guy have to work hard professionally, have to deal with a woman who is full of problems in her head, but he still has to come home from work tired and help out around the house. As I mentioned before, I've heard you mention over the past year in a discussion that the man who provides for the household is not sufficient for her when it comes to having a child and taking care of the child. As well as providing for the household, when he gets home from work, he has to help her look after the child. So you see, in conclusion, let's delve into the question of the Volcels, which I'm about to discuss. Whether they are mitais, realists, or individuals not linked to either of these communities or any of these groups, they are men who, through their own initiative and by observing reality closely, have reached the conclusion that it simply isn't worth it. These men have decided to remain single, whether they choose to undergo a vasectomy or not, and have accepted this decision. It's similar to what Finn Nate mentioned. I believe it was him who stated quite a few years back that ultimately all paths lead to McTaw. Essentially, his prediction was that circumstances would deteriorate to such an extent, becoming so unfavorable, that McTaw would essentially become the logical and rational conclusion for any thoughtful man. This is the reason I chose to adopt this term of skyflight here in Brazil. A Volcel refers to a man who possesses the ability to attract a woman, whether it be for dating, marriage, having children, or choosing not to have them. He has the tools, but his main concern is time, not risks. The amount of time and resources required is essentially a question of whether it's worthwhile or not. As I've mentioned, it's becoming increasingly less worthwhile unless we experience something significant, perhaps a decade from 2020 to 2030, unless we face a major crisis involving stranded women. Things are unlikely to change. For women to begin to lower their heads, and subsequently, the contract governing relationships between the sexes can be open to renegotiation. Currently, myself, Fox, and likely others on the channel have been dealing with the choice between life or heaven. Or perhaps the person is caught in that mix of levels. We don't really talk about levels anymore, but many people probably still find themselves in those stages of just having casual relationships, using apps like GP and Tinder. But in my view, these appear to be the secure trenches today. The trench of celibacy and the trench of committed, non-casual relationships. Skydive definition and its purpose. And skydiving isn't just something that exists solely within the MGTOW community. It likely exists in a variety of other communities as well. As long as the business doesn't begin to yield returns, and as long as the terms of the business aren't renegotiated, I don't see much reason to leave it as it is. Like I mentioned in a previous video, I believe it was the one with the evangelist discussing how essentially any casual relationship, once the man seduces the woman, could be viewed as a form of abuse, almost akin to rape. And it's like what I said in that final video last year. 2019, especially with this Bolsonaro hysteria and also with this epidemic of conservatism, is proving to be a perfect year for the guy to be flying in the sky. My recommendation to everyone, regardless of whether or not you intend to have any other kind of relationship in the future, casual or not, actually can only be casual, sorry. But my recommendation is that 2019 is a great year to take off and devote to yourself. Bitches are nothing more than hoes and tricks, and that's all they are.